Princess Charlotte sat in front of the camera, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted her simple blue dress. Gone were the usual royal jewels and formal attire. Today she wore only her grandmother, a simple pearl necklace and a nervous smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The small recording studio felt cramped compared to the grand halls of Buckingham Palace where she usually addressed the nation. But this message was different. This wasn't coming from the palace press office or through official channels. This was her truth, spoken in her own words from her own heart. "My dear people of Britain and the Commonwealth," she began, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions brewing inside her. "I come to you today not as your princess, but as Charlotte Elizabeth Windsor, a 28-year-old woman who has made the most difficult decision of her life." She paused, taking a deep breath. Behind the camera, her best friend Sarah gave her an encouraging nod. This was it. There was no going back after these words left her lips. "After much consideration and soul-searching, I have decided to renounce my place in the line of succession and give up my royal titles. I will no longer be Princess Charlotte of Wales. I will simply be Charlotte Windsor, a private citizen, free to live the life I choose." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Even Sarah, who had helped her prepare this speech, felt the weight of what was happening. This wasn't just any royal stepping down. Charlotte was third in line to the throne, beloved by the public, and considered the future of the modern monarchy. "I know this decision will shock many of you," Charlotte continued, her composure beginning to crack slightly. "You have watched me grow up, supported me through university, cheered for my charity work, and welcomed me into your hearts. You deserve to know why I am making this choice." She looked directly into the camera as if speaking to each person individually. "I have fallen in love, not with someone chosen for me by tradition or duty, but with someone I chose with my heart. His name is Marcus Thompson, and he is not a prince or a duke or a member of any noble family. He is a teacher from Manchester, the son of immigrants, and the most wonderful man I have ever known." The silence in the room was deafening. Sarah's eyes widened as she realized Charlotte was going further than they had planned. They had discussed mentioning Marcus, but not in such detail, not so boldly. "Marcus and I have been together for 2 years, Charlotte revealed, her voice growing stronger with each word. "We met at a charity event for underprivileged children, where he was volunteering his time to help kids with their reading. While I was there for photographs and speeches, he was there because he truly cared. That's who he is. That's why I love him." She stood up from her chair, unable to sit still any longer. "The royal family has made it clear that our relationship is unacceptable. They have given me an ultimatum: end my relationship with Marcus or face the consequences. I choose love. I choose the freedom to marry whom I wish, to live where I want, and to pursue the career that fulfills me." The emotion in her voice was impossible to miss now. Years of suppressed feelings, of duty over desire, of living for others instead of herself poured out in those words. "I want to be clear about something," she said, wiping away a tear that had escaped despite her efforts to remain composed. "This decision reflects no disrespect for my family or for the institution of the monarchy. I love my family deeply, and I understand the importance of their role. But I cannot sacrifice my happiness and my future for a title that feels like a golden cage." She sat back down, folding her hands in her lap. "I know there will be those who say I am selfish, that I am abandoning my duty. Perhaps they are right, but I believe that in a modern world, even royals should have the right to choose their own path. I hope that my decision, difficult as it is, will help pave the way for future generations of royals to live more authentic lives." The camera captured her sad smile as she delivered her final words. "I want to thank the British people for their love and support throughout my life. I will always be grateful for the opportunities I have had to serve you. Though I will no longer do so as a princess, I hope to continue making a positive difference in whatever way I can." She looked directly into the lens one last time. "I ask for your understanding and respect for my privacy as I begin this new chapter. Thank you." The red recording light went off and Charlotte collapsed back into her chair, emotionally drained. Sarah rushed over to embrace her friend, knowing that in just a few hours when this video went live, the world would change forever. Outside, Marcus was waiting in the car, equally nervous about what was to come. He had tried to talk Charlotte out of this dramatic announcement, suggesting they simply disappear quietly. But Charlotte had insisted that the people deserved to hear the truth from her. not from tabloid speculation and palace spin. As they prepared to upload the video to Charlotte's personal social media accounts, none of them could predict the absolute chaos that was about to unfold across every platform, newspaper and television screen in the world. The princess had spoken. Now the people would respond. 2 years earlier, Charlotte had been going through the motions of royal life like a beautiful robot programmed for duty. Every day was scheduled down to the minute. Morning briefings, charity visits, ribbon cuttings, formal dinners, and endless meetings about her image and public perception. She smiled when expected, waved when required, and spoke the words written for her by palace communications staff. The charity event at the East Manchester Community Centre was supposed to be just another Tuesday afternoon obligation. Charlotte's assistant had briefed her during the car ride. 30 minutes maximum, Your Royal Highness. Photos with the organizers, a short speech about literacy, maybe read to a few children if time permits. We need to be back for your fitting with the designer for next week's state dinner. Charlotte nodded absently, watching the gray Manchester streets roll by through bulletproof glass. She had given variations of the same literacy speech dozens of times. The words felt hollow now, rehearsed phrases about the importance of reading and investing in our children's futures. She meant them, truly, but they had been stripped of all spontaneity and genuine emotion by years of royal protocol. The community center was buzzing with activity when she arrived. Cameras flashed as she stepped out of the official car, flanked by security. Local officials rushed forward to greet her, nervous smiles and sweaty handshakes all around. She was led through the usual routine, a tour of the facilities, introductions to board members whose names she would forget within hours, and carefully staged photo opportunities. But then something unexpected happened. While her handlers were discussing the schedule in hushed tones, Charlotte wandered toward a corner of the main room where a small group of children sat in a circle on colorful carpet squares. They were completely absorbed in a story being read by a young man sitting cross-legged among them. His voice animated as he brought the characters to life. And then the dragon realized, Marcus was saying, lowering his voice to a dramatic whisper, that he wasn't scary at all. He was just lonely and needed a friend. 8-year-old Amira raised her hand eagerly. My teacher says I'm scary sometimes, but I'm just sad because my dad's away. Marcus smiled warmly. You know what, Amira? Sometimes when people feel sad or worried, it comes out in ways that seem scary to others. But that doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you human. Charlotte found herself moving closer, forgetting about the cameras and the schedule. There was something magnetic about the way this man connected with the children. How he listened to them not as photo opportunities, but as real people with real feelings. Your Royal Highness, one of her security officers whispered urgently. We should move to the prepared area for the reading session. But Charlotte raised her hand to stop him, mesmerized by what she was witnessing. Marcus had noticed the commotion but continued with his story, never breaking character or making the children feel like they were being interrupted. When he finished the book, the children erupted in applause. It was then that Marcus looked up and saw Charlotte standing there, having completely forgotten about royal protocol herself. She was sitting on the floor now, having joined the circle during the story. Did you like the story, miss? Asked 7-year-old Tyler, not recognizing the princess without her usual formal attire and crown. I loved it, Charlotte replied honestly. Especially the part about the dragon just needing a friend. Marcus stood up, suddenly aware of who was in his reading circle. Your Royal Highness, I didn't realize you were... He started to bow, but Charlotte stopped him. Please don't. I was enjoying the story too much to worry about titles. She looked around at the children, who were now staring at her with wide eyes as they began to recognize her from television. Could we read another one? What was supposed to be a 30-minute visit turned into 2 hours. Charlotte read stories alongside Marcus, helped children with their writing exercises, and for the first time in years, forgot that she was a princess. She was just Charlotte, sitting on a community center floor, laughing with children and feeling genuinely useful. Marcus Thompson, she learned, was 29 years old and had been teaching at the local primary school for 6 years. His parents had immigrated from Jamaica when he was a baby, working multiple jobs to give him opportunities they had never had. He volunteered at the community center every Tuesday after school, not for recognition or career advancement, but because he genuinely believed every child deserved someone who cared about their education. Why do you do this? Charlotte asked him as they helped the children pack up their books. Marcus looked surprised by the question. Because it matters. These kids, they don't have much, but they have curiosity and dreams. If I can help them read better, maybe they'll discover something that changes their whole world. It was such a simple answer, so different from the complicated political and social calculations that drove most of Charlotte's charitable work. There was no agenda here, no publicity benefit, no strategic value. Just a man who cared about children. As Charlotte's security team finally managed to extract her from the center, she found herself thinking about Marcus all the way back to London. Not because he was handsome, though he certainly was, with kind brown eyes and an easy smile. Not because he had impressed her with grand gestures or clever conversation, but because he had shown her what it looked like to live with purpose rather than duty. Over the following weeks, Charlotte found excuses to return to Manchester.
Follow-up visits, she told her staff.
Making sure our donations are being used effectively. Each time, Marcus was there, reading to children, helping with homework, organizing book drives. Their friendship developed slowly, built on shared conversations about education, social justice, and the power of storytelling. Marcus treated her like a person, not a princess. He challenged her ideas, made her laugh, and listened when she expressed frustration with the limitations of royal charity work. The first time he invited her for coffee at a small cafe near the community center, Charlotte realized she was falling in love. Not with the idea of rebellion or with escaping her duties, but with this extraordinary, ordinary man who made her feel like the best version of herself. But their growing relationship came with impossible complications that would soon tear Charlotte's world apart. The video went live at exactly 6 p.m. London time on a Wednesday evening. Within 3 minutes, Charlotte's Instagram account crashed from the sudden influx of traffic. Within 5 minutes, Prouder Princess Charlotte was trending #1 worldwide on Twitter. Within 10 minutes, every major news organization in the world was scrambling to cover the story. At the BBC headquarters, senior producer James Mitchell was in a budget meeting when his phone started buzzing incessantly. The first notification made him pause. The second made him frown. By the fifth notification in 30 seconds, he was standing up from the conference table. "I'm sorry, everyone, but I think we need to cut this short," he said, his face pale as he read the breaking news alerts flooding his screen. "Princess Charlotte just announced she's renouncing her titles." The conference room erupted. Within minutes, the entire newsroom was in chaos as producers, reporters, and technical staff scrambled to switch from their regular programming to breaking news coverage. Meanwhile, on social media platforms around the world, the reaction was instant and explosive. On Twitter, the responses ranged from heartbreak to celebration to outrage. Royal Watcher 2024 tweeted, "I'm actually crying. Princess Charlotte was the future of our monarchy. How could she abandon us like this? Heartbroken." Modern Monarchy replied, "Good for her. Living authentically is more important than outdated traditions. She shouldn't have to sacrifice love for duty in 2025. Team Charlotte, British tradition, posted, "This is what happens when we let royals get too casual with the public. Absolute disgrace to the crown. The Queen must be rolling in her grave." The hashtag #ChooseLove began trending alongside #Princess Charlotte as supporters rallied around Charlotte's decision. Young people especially seemed energized by her choice. To prioritize personal happiness over institutional obligation, Instagram exploded with fan art, supportive messages, and reaction videos. Teenage girls posted tearful selfies expressing how Charlotte's decision inspired them to be brave in their own lives. Influencers with millions of followers shared their thoughts, mostly supportive of Charlotte's choice to follow her heart. On TikTok, the response was swift and creative. Within hours, the platform was flooded with videos set to emotional music, montages of Charlotte's royal moments paired with captions like, "She gave up a crown for love," and "Plot twist, the princess saved herself." Young creators reenacted imagined conversations between Charlotte and Marcus, turning their love story into modern fairy tale content. But not all reactions were positive. On Facebook, where an older demographic dominated, the comments were harsh and unforgiving. Traditional monarchy supporters expressed their anger and disappointment. Multiple groups formed within hours. "Support the crown, Charlotte's betrayal and defend royal tradition gained thousands of members overnight. Margaret Thornberry, a 67-year-old retired teacher from Yorkshire, posted a lengthy status that was shared over 50,000 times. I watched this girl grow up. We supported her through university, cheered her accomplishments, and trusted her to serve us. Now she throws it all away for some man. This is selfishness, pure and simple. The monarchy isn't about personal happiness. It's about duty to country. The international response was equally divided. American social media users largely celebrated Charlotte's decision, viewing it through the lens of individual freedom and romantic love. French users were more cynical, with many posting variations of "at least she didn't lose her head like Marie Antoinette." German users seemed pragmatically supportive, appreciating what they saw as a rational choice between personal fulfillment and institutional duty. Celebrity responses added fuel to the fire. Actress Emma Stone posted on Instagram, "Sometimes the most royal thing you can do is stay true to yourself. Sending love to Charlotte." Her post received 2.3 million likes within 4 hours. British celebrity chef Gordon Ramsay caused controversy with his tweet, "Takes guts to give up everything for love. More spine than most people I know. Respect, Charlotte." The tweet sparked heated debates about whether celebrities should weigh in on royal matters. Meanwhile, traditional media struggled to keep up with the social media storm. Television networks interrupted regular programming with breaking news coverage. Radio stations fielded angry phone calls from listeners. Newspaper websites crashed from traffic as everyone sought more information about Marcus Thompson and the secret relationship. The hashtag #JarMarcusThompson began trending as social media. Users desperately searched for information about the man who had captured a princess's heart. Photos from the community center event 2 years ago resurfaced and went viral. His LinkedIn profile was screenshotted and shared thousands of times, with users analyzing his education and career history. Some creative users began investigating Marcus's social media presence, discovering that he had kept his accounts private for months. The few public photos available showed a man who looked genuinely happy but unremarkable, exactly the kind of normal person that made his relationship with Charlotte so shocking to royal watchers. On Reddit, multiple threads dissected every aspect of the announcement. Users analyzed Charlotte's body language, debated the timing of the announcement, and speculated about the royal family's response. The relationship subreddit was flooded with posts from users comparing their own relationship struggles to Charlotte's choice. By midnight London time, the story had generated over 50 million social media interactions across all platforms. News websites reported traffic numbers that broke their previous records. The story dominated every trending list, every news feed, and every water cooler conversation. But perhaps the most telling responses came from ordinary young women who saw themselves in Charlotte's struggle. 24-year-old teacher Sarah Chen from Toronto posted a video that went viral overnight. "If a literal princess can choose love over expectation, maybe I can choose my own path too. Thank you, Charlotte, for showing us it's okay to disappoint people if it means being true to yourself." As the digital chaos continued through the night, one thing became clear. Princess Charlotte's announcement had touched a nerve that went far beyond royal protocol. In a world where young people increasingly questioned traditional institutions and prioritized personal authenticity, her choice resonated as something much larger than one woman's love story. The conversation was no longer just about the monarchy. It was about freedom, duty, love, and the courage to choose your own life even when the whole world is watching. King William was in his study at Windsor Castle, reviewing briefing papers for the next day's trade meeting with Japanese officials, when his private secretary burst through the door without knocking. The breach of protocol was so unprecedented that William looked up in alarm, fearing news of a terrorist attack or family emergency. "Your Majesty," the secretary said, his face ashen, "Princess Charlotte has just posted a video announcement. She's renouncing her titles." For a moment, William stared at him in incomprehension. "She's what?" "She's given up her place in the line of succession, sir. She's announced it publicly, on social media. The video is already going viral." William's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, and then a cold fury that his staff had rarely seen. He stood up slowly, his hands gripping the edge of his ornate desk. "Get me that video. Now. And call an emergency meeting of the senior royals. Everyone. I don't care what they're doing or where they are." Within minutes, William was watching his daughter's announcement on his computer screen, his jaw tightening with each word. By the time Charlotte mentioned Marcus Thompson by name, the king's face was stone cold. When she spoke about choosing love over duty, he slammed the laptop shut. "How could she do this?" he muttered to himself. "How could she betray everything we've worked for?" Across London at Clarence House, Queen Catherine was hosting a dinner party for the board of her children's charity when her personal assistant whispered urgently in her ear. Catherine's wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice remarkably steady despite the chaos she felt inside. "I'm afraid I must cut this evening short due to an urgent family matter." The guests exchanged worried glances as Catherine excused herself, her mind racing. Charlotte had always been headstrong, but this was beyond anything she had imagined. As she was driven toward Windsor Castle, Catherine's phone buzzed constantly with calls from palace officials, other royals, and media contacts. She ignored them all. Prince George, Charlotte's older brother and now second in line to the throne, was at a charity gala in Edinburgh when his protection officer approached him discreetly. George's face went pale as he read the message on the officer's phone. "I need to leave immediately," he told the event organizers, offering no explanation. During the 3-hour drive back to London, he tried calling Charlotte repeatedly. Every call went straight to voicemail. Princess Louise, Charlotte's younger sister, was studying at Oxford when her roommate frantically shook her awake at 11 p.m., showing her the viral video on TikTok. Louise stared at the screen in shock, watching her sister's familiar face say words that seemed impossible. "She actually did it," Louise whispered. "She really did it." Back at Windsor Castle, the emergency meeting convened at midnight in the king's private study. The room felt suffocating with tension as the senior royals gathered. King William, Queen Catherine, Prince George, and several senior palace officials, including the private secretary and the head of communications. "Has anyone spoken to her?" William demanded without preamble. "Her phone is turned off, Your Majesty," reported the private secretary. "Our security team has confirmed she's no longer at her Kensington Palace apartment. We believe she's with friends." Catherine spoke for the first time since arriving. "What exactly did she say in this video? I want to hear every word." As the video played again, the room fell silent except for Charlotte's voice explaining her decision. Catherine's eyes filled with tears as she watched her daughter speak about love and freedom, while William's expression grew darker with each passing second. "She's made a mockery of the crown," William said when the video ended. 200 years of tradition, centuries of duty and service, and she throws it away for some teacher from Manchester. "She's in love, William," Catherine said quietly. "Surely you remember what that feels like." "Don't," William snapped. "Don't compare this to us. We made it work. We found a way to honor both love and duty. She's chosen to run away instead of fighting for both." Prince George, who had been silent throughout the meeting, finally spoke. "Maybe she's braver than the rest of us. Maybe she's the only one honest enough to admit that this life isn't for everyone." The room turned to stare at him. William's heir apparent, the future king, defending his sister's abandonment of royal duty. "George," William warned, his voice dangerous. "I'm not saying I agree with her methods," George continued carefully, "but I understand her feelings. The constant scrutiny, the impossible expectations, the way every personal choice becomes a matter of state policy. Sometimes I wonder if any of us are really living or just performing." Catherine reached over and squeezed her son's hand, recognizing the pain in his voice. The weight of being heir to the throne had always been heavier on George than on his siblings. The head of communications cleared his throat nervously. "Your Majesty, we need to decide on a response. The media is going into overdrive. Every network wants a statement. Social media is exploding. We're being asked for comment by everyone from the BBC to international outlets. What are our options?" William asked curtly. "We could issue a brief statement expressing disappointment but wishing her well. We could remain silent and let it blow over. We could—" The communications director hesitated. "What?" "We could try to bring her back. Issue a statement saying that her titles remain intact pending further discussion. Leave the door open for reconciliation." William stood and walked to the window, looking out at the dark grounds of Windsor Castle. For several minutes no one spoke. "She's made her choice," he said finally. She's chosen to humiliate the crown publicly. She's chosen some stranger over her family and her country. There will be no reconciliation attempts. There will be no open doors. William, Catherine protested, she's our daughter. She's a former princess who has abandoned her duty. William replied coldly. Draft a statement. The royal family accepts Princess Charlotte's decision to renounce her titles and wishes her well in her private life. That's it. Nothing more. But the succession, the private secretary interjected. Legally, we need to clarify the line of succession. Parliament will need to be informed. Handle it, William said dismissively. Remove her name from all official documents. George moves up. Louise becomes third in line. Charlotte Elizabeth Windsor is now a private citizen. As the meeting broke up in the early hours of the morning, Catherine lingered behind with George. Your father is hurt, she said softly. He feels betrayed. Give him time. George nodded, but his expression was troubled. What if she's right, Mother? What if this whole system is just an elaborate prison? Catherine had no answer for him. As she made her way back to her own rooms, she couldn't shake the image of Charlotte's face in that video, sadder than she had ever seen her daughter, but also somehow more alive. Meanwhile, in a small flat in Manchester, Charlotte was sitting on Marcus's couch, her phone turned off, watching the man she loved make them both cups of tea. For the first time in her life, she felt truly free. But she had no idea that her father had just cut her off completely, or that her decision would soon tear her family apart in ways none of them could have imagined. Marcus Thompson woke up on Thursday morning to the sound of helicopters circling overhead and the constant clicking of camera shutters outside his bedroom window. For a moment he lay in bed confused, wondering if there had been an accident in his quiet Manchester neighborhood. Then reality crashed over him like a cold wave. Charlotte's announcement. The video. Everything had changed overnight. He pulled back the curtain slightly and immediately regretted it. His small terraced house was surrounded by reporters, photographers, and television crews. Satellite vans lined both sides of his street. Neighbors stood in their doorways, pointing and whispering. Mrs. Ahmed from next door was being interviewed by a woman with perfectly styled hair and a BBC microphone. His phone had been buzzing constantly since 3 a.m. Text messages, missed calls, voicemails from numbers he didn't recognize. News organizations, documentary filmmakers, book publishers, and what appeared to be marriage proposals from complete strangers. He had turned it to silent after the first 100 notifications, but the screen continued lighting up like a frantic strobe. Charlotte was still asleep beside him, exhausted from the emotional weight of her announcement. Marcus watched her peaceful face and felt a crushing weight of responsibility. This incredible, brave woman had given up everything for him. A future queen had chosen a primary school teacher from Manchester. The magnitude of it was overwhelming. A loud knock at the front door startled him. Then another, and another. The knocking was continuous now, reporters clearly taking turns to ensure someone was always trying to get his attention. Marcus Thompson, a voice shouted through the letter slot. This is Jeremy Paxman from Channel 4 News. We'd love to get your side of the story.
Marcus.
Another voice called. Daily Mail here. What do you have to say about stealing a princess from the British people? Marcus felt sick. Stealing? Is that how they saw it? He had never pursued Charlotte, never tried to woo her away from her royal duties. If anything, he had tried to talk her out of this dramatic gesture multiple times over the past few months. His phone rang again. This time it was a number he recognized, his headmaster at Oakwood Primary School. Marcus, Mr. Henderson's voice was strained. I know this is difficult, but I need you to know that there are reporters at the school gates. The children are frightened. Parents are calling. I think it's best if you take some time off until this dies down. Marcus closed his eyes. He had taught at Oakwood for 6 years. Those children meant everything to him. The thought of his students being scared because of media attention made him feel physically ill. Of course, Mr. Henderson, I understand. I'm sorry for any disruption. It's not your fault, lad, but you know how it is. The safety of the children comes first. After hanging up, Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, head in his hands. Everything he had worked for, everything he cared about, was being torn apart by circumstances beyond his control. Charlotte stirred and opened her eyes, immediately noticing his distress. What is it? What's happened? The school, he said quietly. They've suspended me. There are reporters frightening the children. Charlotte sat up quickly, fully awake now. "Oh, Marcus, I'm so sorry. This is exactly what I was afraid of." "It's not your fault," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. But it was becoming clear that this was just the beginning. As the day progressed, the media scrutiny intensified. Journalists had apparently spent the night researching every aspect of Marcus's life. His childhood, his education, his family, his previous relationships. Everything was being examined and reported. The headlines were brutal. From classroom to crown. The teacher who stole a princess, Marcus Thompson. The man who destroyed the monarchy, Princess and the Pauper. Charlotte's shocking choice. Television news programs ran segments about his background. They interviewed his former university classmates, neighbors from his childhood home in Birmingham, and even his ex-girlfriend from teacher training college. Everyone seemed to have an opinion about whether he was worthy of a princess's love. Sky News ran a panel discussion titled, "Is Love Enough?" The Marcus Thompson question. 4 experts debated whether a commoner could truly understand the sacrifices required to marry into the royal family. "He's clearly a decent man," said royal correspondent Victoria Shaw. "But does he understand what Charlotte has given up for him? Can someone from his background truly appreciate the magnitude of royal duty?" The class undertones were impossible to ignore. Commentary pieces dissected his parents' immigration story, his state school education, and his modest salary. Some framed it as a beautiful love story transcending social boundaries. Others suggested he was an opportunist who had manipulated a naive princess. By afternoon, the situation had escalated beyond simple media attention. Protesters had gathered outside his house. Some held signs supporting the couple, "Love wins" and Charlotte's choice. But others were less kind, "Give back our princess and respect the crown." Marcus's parents, Michael and Grace Thompson, were trapped in their own home 40 miles away in Birmingham. Grace, a retired nurse, called her son in tears. "They keep asking if we knew," she sobbed. "If we approved of you dating a princess." "Marcus, they made it sound like we were plotting something terrible." His father, a retired bus driver, was furious. "40 years I've lived in this country," Michael said, his Jamaican accent thicker when he was angry. "Worked every day, paid my taxes, raised my children to be good people. Now they're treating us like we're criminals because our son fell in love." The invasion of privacy was relentless. Reporters had obtained photos of Marcus from his university years, his teacher training program, even childhood pictures from family friends. His social media history was analyzed for clues about his relationship with Charlotte. Every holiday photo, every status update, every friend he had ever tagged was scrutinized for evidence of royal connections. What hurt Marcus most was how the narrative was being twisted. The media painted him as either a gold digger who had seduced a princess for personal gain, or as a naive man who had no idea what he was getting into. Neither version reflected the truth of their relationship. 2 people who had found genuine connection and deep love despite the impossible circumstances. Charlotte tried to shield him from the worst of it, but Marcus saw her checking her phone constantly, her face growing paler with each new headline or social media trend. "Maybe they're right," he said that evening as they sat in his small kitchen, curtains drawn, listening to the crowd outside. "Maybe I don't understand what you've given up. Maybe I'm being selfish asking you to throw your life away for me." Charlotte took his hands across the small table. "Marcus Thompson, don't you dare let them make you doubt what we have. I didn't give up my life for you. I chose a real life with you over a fake life without you." But even as she spoke those words, both of them could feel the enormous pressure building around them. The media attention wasn't dying down, it was intensifying. And somewhere in the back of Marcus's mind, a terrible thought was growing. What if loving Charlotte meant destroying everything good in both their lives? Outside, the cameras kept clicking, the helicopters kept circling, and the world kept demanding answers to questions that felt impossible to answer. How much scrutiny could their love survive? And was it fair to either of them to find out? By Friday evening, something unexpected began to happen. What had started as a media frenzy focused on scandal and criticism began to shift towards something else entirely. A grassroots movement of support that caught everyone off guard. It began with a young woman named Priya Patel, a 23-year-old university student from Leicester. Watching the relentless media coverage of Marcus and Charlotte, she became increasingly angry at what she saw as cruel treatment of 2 people whose only crime was falling in love. "Priya," created a Facebook event called Stand with Charlotte, and Marcus and invited her friends. The description was simple: peaceful gathering to support Princess Charlotte's right to choose love over duty. Meet at Parliament Square, Saturday 2 p.m. Bring flowers, bring kindness, bring support for true love. She expected maybe 30 people to show up, and her friends, a few classmates, perhaps some curious onlookers. She had no idea she was about to spark the largest royal-related demonstration in modern British history. The event was shared 10,000 times within 6 hours. Similar events spontaneously appeared in Manchester, Edinburgh, Cardiff, and Belfast. International supporters created their own gatherings in New York, Toronto, Sydney, and Paris. The hashtag #I'mStandWithCharlotte began trending alongside Love Over Duty. Emma Richardson, a 34-year-old teacher from Liverpool, saw Priya's event and felt compelled to act. As someone who had struggled with family pressure to pursue a practical career instead of following her passion for education, Charlotte's story resonated deeply. "I've watched this beautiful, intelligent woman serve her country with grace for years," Emma posted in a viral TikTok video that garnered 2.3 million views overnight. "She's done everything asked of her. She's been the perfect princess. And the moment she chooses happiness over duty, she's called selfish. That's not the Britain I want to live in." The support wasn't just coming from young people. Margaret Davies, a 72-year-old grandmother from Wales, surprised her adult children by announcing she was driving to London for the Saturday demonstration. "I've followed the royal family my whole life," Margaret told her daughter over the phone. "I stood in the rain to see Queen Elizabeth's coronation. I cried at Diana's funeral. But I've also watched these young people sacrifice their personal happiness for our entertainment. Enough is enough. That girl deserves to choose her own life." Stories like Margaret's were being shared across social media platforms. Parents talked about wanting their children to prioritize authentic happiness over social expectations. Young women shared their own experiences of choosing careers, partners, or life paths that disappointed their families but fulfilled their hearts. Dr. Sarah Chen, a relationship psychologist who had become an unexpected voice in the conversation, appeared on BBC Breakfast Friday morning with a perspective that resonated with millions. "What we're witnessing isn't just about one couple," Dr. Chen explained. "Princess Charlotte's decision represents a generational shift in how we think about duty, family expectations, and personal autonomy. Young people today are increasingly unwilling to sacrifice their authentic selves for institutional approval, and they see Charlotte as brave rather than selfish." The movement gained momentum when celebrities began speaking out more boldly. Singer Adele posted an Instagram photo of herself holding a sign reading, "Choose Love," with the caption, "Takes courage to walk away from everything you've known for something real." Proud of Charlotte for showing young women everywhere that your happiness matters. British actor Idris Elba tweeted, "Been thinking about tradition versus authenticity all week. Sometimes the most respectful thing you can do is be honest about who you are, even if it disappoints people. But perhaps the most powerful support came from an unexpected source: other royals from around the world. Princess Victoria of Sweden, heir to the Swedish throne, released a carefully worded statement that sent shockwaves through royal circles. "While I cannot comment on the internal affairs of other royal families, I believe every person deserves the right to choose their own path to happiness, regardless of the circumstances of their birth." Crown Princess Mary of Denmark was more subtle but equally supportive, posting a quote on her official Instagram account. "Authenticity is the daily practice of letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we are." The post received over 500,000 likes in 12 hours. By Saturday morning, the demonstration organizers were overwhelmed by the response. What Priya had envisioned as a small gathering of supporters had grown into something requiring police coordination and crowd control barriers. People began arriving at Parliament Square as early as 8 a.m., despite the event not starting until 2 p.m. They came carrying flowers, handmade signs, and stories of their own struggles with family expectations and social pressure. Sarah Jenkins, 28, had driven down from Scotland with her girlfriend. "I've been with Emma for 5 years, but my family still won't accept our relationship," she told a reporter. "Seeing Charlotte choose love over family approval gives me hope that things can change." University student David Park brought his elderly Korean grandmother, who spoke limited English but had insisted on attending. She says in Korea family duty is very important, David translated, but she thinks love is more important. She wants to support the princess. The crowd was remarkably diverse, young and old, wealthy and working class, representing every ethnicity and background imaginable. What united them wasn't political ideology or even necessarily support for the monarchy, but a shared belief that love should triumph over obligation. As 2 p.m. approached, Parliament Square was packed with an estimated 15,000 people. Similar gatherings across the UK drew thousands more. The international demonstrations, particularly in New York's Central Park and Sydney's Hyde Park, showed the global resonance of Charlotte's story. The atmosphere was peaceful but electric. People shared stories, sang songs, and created an enormous memorial of flowers and supportive messages that they planned to deliver to Charlotte and Marcus. When Priya Patel, the young woman who had started it all, took the makeshift stage to address the crowd, her voice shook with emotion. 2 days ago, Princess Charlotte showed us that even princesses can choose love over fear, she said, her words amplified across the square. Today we show her that she's not alone, that her courage has inspired thousands of us to be braver in our own lives. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause that could be heard blocks away, but perhaps the most moving moment came when an unexpected figure appeared at the edge of the demonstration. Princess Louise, Charlotte's younger sister, had quietly joined the crowd wearing jeans and a baseball cap, carrying a simple sign that read, "Love my sister." When people began to recognize her, instead of causing chaos, a protective circle formed around the young princess. The crowd seemed to understand instinctively that this was a moment of family support that transcended royal protocol. Louise was allowed to place her flowers with the others and leave peacefully, but her presence sent a powerful message. Even within the royal family, Charlotte had allies. As the demonstration concluded peacefully, one thing was clear. What had begun as a personal love story had become a cultural moment. Charlotte and Marcus had inadvertently sparked a conversation about authenticity, duty, and the right to choose one's own path that was resonating far beyond the borders of Britain. The question now was whether this groundswell of public support would be enough to protect them from the forces arrayed against their relationship, including Charlotte's own family. 6 months after the announcement that shook the world, Charlotte Windsor stood in the garden of a small cottage in the Cotswolds, watching Marcus teach a group of local children about butterfly migration. The media circus had finally died down to a manageable hum, and they had found something approaching a normal life. The cottage belonged to Charlotte's friend Sarah, who had offered it as a refuge when the London media attention became unbearable. What was meant to be a temporary hideaway had become their home. Charlotte had discovered she loved the quiet village life, the anonymity of grocery shopping without security details, and the simple pleasure of walking hand in hand with Marcus without photographers documenting every step. The past 6 months had been the most challenging of both their lives, but also strangely liberating. The immediate aftermath of the announcement had been brutal. Death threats from monarchy extremists, constant invasions of privacy, and the pain of being cut off from most of her family had pushed Charlotte to the edge of despair more than once. But they had survived it together. Marcus had eventually found work at the local village school, where the head mistress, Mrs. Elizabeth Hartwell, had hired him despite the media attention. "Good teachers are hard to find," she had told the assembled reporters firmly. "Mr. Thompson's personal life is none of our concern. His ability to inspire children is." The children at Little Wickham Primary School had initially been excited to have a teacher who was famous for dating a princess, but that novelty had quickly worn off. Now they simply knew Mr. Thompson as the teacher who made learning fun, who stayed after school to help with reading, and who organized the best nature walks they had ever experienced. Charlotte had struggled more with finding her new purpose. For 28 years, her identity had been entirely wrapped up in being a princess. Without royal duties, charity patronages, and official engagements, she had felt lost at first. But gradually, she had discovered who Charlotte Windsor was when she wasn't Princess Charlotte. She volunteered at the local library, helped elderly residents with technology problems, and had quietly started writing a children's book about a dragon who chose friendship over frightening people. The public support had been sustaining during the darkest moments. Letters arrived daily from around the world, from young women who had found courage to leave unhappy relationships, from people who had chosen authentic careers over family expectations, from parents who were learning to support their children's choices even when they didn't understand them. One letter particularly touched Charlotte. It came from a young teacher in Manchester named Amira Hassan, the same little girl who had raised her hand during Marcus's story time 2 years ago at the community center. Dear Charlotte, the letter, read in careful handwriting. I wanted you to know that Mr. Marcus's stories helped me become a teacher too. He taught me that everyone deserves someone who believes in them. I think you're both very brave. Love, Amira, age 10 when we met, age 24 now, and Miss Hassan to my students. The most difficult aspect had been the rift with her family. King William had maintained his cold distance, refusing all contact. Official palace communication still referred to her only as Ms. Charlotte Windsor in the rare instances when acknowledgement was necessary, but cracks had begun to appear in the royal wall of silence. Queen Catherine had started sending brief, carefully neutral text messages. Nothing that could be construed as official approval, but small signs that she missed her daughter. Saw the bluebells are blooming early this year. Remember how you loved them as a child? Or your favorite bakery in London closed. Thought you should know. Prince George had been more direct. Despite the risks to his own position, he had begun calling Charlotte once a week. Their conversations were careful and often awkward, but they were slowly rebuilding their relationship. Father is still furious, George had told her during their most recent call, but Mother cries sometimes when she thinks no one is looking. Louise misses you terribly. Princess Louise had sent a care package containing Charlotte's favorite tea and a handwritten note. Being the perfect princess is exhausting. Thank you for showing me there's another way. Love always, Elle. The most surprising development had come from an unexpected source, public opinion polls. 6 months after the initial shock, surveys showed that 60% of British people under 40 supported Charlotte's decision. Among women aged 18-35, support rose to 72%. More significantly, support for the monarchy overall had initially dipped, but then stabilized at a higher level than before the crisis. Political analysts suggested that Charlotte's decision had, paradoxically, made the royal family seem more human and relatable. The younger generation was already questioning the relevance of hereditary privilege, explained political scientist Dr. Amanda Foster on a BBC panel discussion marking the 6-month anniversary. Charlotte's choice to prioritize personal happiness actually made the monarchy seem less antiquated, not more so. The international impact had been even more pronounced. Charlotte and Marcus's story had been adapted into documentaries, books, and even a musical, currently running in New York's Broadway district. They had inadvertently become symbols of choosing authenticity over tradition, inspiring similar conversations about duty versus personal freedom in cultures around the world. On this particular Sunday evening, as Charlotte watched Marcus help 8-year-old Tommy identify a red admiral butterfly, she felt a peace she had never experienced during her royal years. Her phone buzzed with a text message, and she was surprised to see it was from an unknown number. Charlotte, this is your father. We need to talk. Can you come to Windsor next weekend? Just you, William. Charlotte stared at the message for several minutes. After 6 months of silence, King William was ready to communicate. She wasn't sure if she was ready for whatever conversation he had in mind. Marcus noticed her expression and walked over, his hands still dusty from helping children plant wildflower seeds. Everything all right? He asked gently. Charlotte showed him the message. Marcus read it twice, his expression thoughtful. What do you think it means? Charlotte asked. I think, Marcus said carefully, it means your father has realized that loving you is more important than being right about your choices. That evening, Charlotte sent her reply, yes, I'll come. But Marcus comes with me or not at all. The response came quickly. Both of you. Saturday at 3 p.m. There are things we need to discuss. As Charlotte and Marcus prepared for what would surely be a life-changing conversation, neither of them could know that King William had spent weeks in private meetings with constitutional lawyers, exploring unprecedented options for bringing his daughter back into the royal fold without compromising her marriage choice. The story that had begun with a shocking announcement was about to enter a new chapter, one that might redefine what it meant to be a royal in the modern world. 6 months ago, Princess Charlotte had chosen love over duty. Now perhaps she would discover that love and duty didn't have to be mutually exclusive after all. The butterfly Marcus and the children had been watching finally took flight, disappearing over the cottage garden wall toward an uncertain but hopeful future, much like Charlotte and Marcus themselves.